All right. Well, hello, everyone. We're at the 5 o'clock hour. Good to see some familiar faces. We'll go ahead and get started tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Keefe, and I support the ICCA's education and legislative initiatives. I am really excited to kickstart our license readiness series with today's discussion focused on cannabis facility construction. And then just to note our upcoming calendar, towards the end of April, we'll also be hosting another event called Craft Cannabis Financing, which will include an update on the current state of financing cannabis businesses in Illinois, an overall discussion of available financing options, and a panel where we will have experienced investors who understand the Illinois market provide their unique insights. So I don't think you want to miss that. And then finally, also in April, we'll be hosting another town hall, and this one will be specifically targeted to current legislation issues. And we'll send out an invite as soon as we have the date selected on the calendar. So right now I'm going to hand it over to the esteemed David Ruskin, who will introduce tonight's presenters.
Thanks, Brian. Esteemed, really?
Esteemed.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. Good to see ICCA back. I haven't seen you in a while, but this is another in these terrific prep webinar series that we're holding, and they're invaluable with all the information that we're going to get from subject matter experts, including tonight. And tonight we have an amazing opportunity to hear from a true expert in the cannabis industry, certainly and especially in Illinois, where he's based and where we are all based. I'm so excited to introduce Andy Poticha to you because I know Andy through the industry, working in the industry. I also know him as a friend outside of the industry. His experience in building cannabis facilities and his insight, his knowledge, his information that you're going to get tonight is unmatched. And it's just terrific that he's here with us tonight. You're in for a treat. I'm going to do some obligatory bio reading here because it's important. Andy's built a nice career and he deserves to have his bio read. Andy has more than 30 years of sales, client management, trade and supplier negotiation, system development, and production process management experience. In 1991, Andy founded Design Construction Concepts. That's 30 years, Andy. Happy anniversary. And in 2004, Andy founded Mosaic Construction. In 2015, Andy and his partners created Cannabis Facility Construction, a division of Mosaic Construction, as a national industry leader in full-service cannabis facility design build. As business development opportunities emerge in the rapidly growing cannabis industry, Andy's customers rely on him and CFC to design build facilities that are on time and within budget, of course. To date, Andy and his partners have built and are in the process of building 40 cultivation facilities, processing centers, and dispensary projects in 12 different states, including Illinois. A wealth of experience and knowledge and information. And for the next 30 minutes, Andy Poticha is going to give us a scintillating presentation on design, build, and cannabis facility construction, which we all need, right? I mean, we need this information so that when we are actually awarded licenses sometime this century, Andy's going to be able to give us some information tonight and down the road. And by the way, I'm going to ask Andy a few questions throughout his presentation, not many, just got to keep him on his toes. But then you're going to have an opportunity as well to ask some questions too. So hold your questions for the presentation, but if you can type them into the chat or the Q&A, I'll either read them or maybe I'll ask you to unmute and ask the question, but we'll save the second half of this for questions. If for some reason we go along or you don't get, or you think of a question afterwards, I know Andy in his presentation has his contact information at the end, and certainly he's willing to talk to you as well if you have questions afterwards. So without further ado, I present you Andy Poticha with a terrific presentation. Take it away, Andy. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. Quite an introduction. I don't think I got that kind of introduction at my wedding, so I appreciate that. I'll try to do my best to live up to it. Good evening, everybody. My name is Andy Poticha, and our company is Cannabis Facility Construction. That's a division of Mosaic Construction, as David had mentioned. And we've been doing it for a little while, as David said, 30 years. And we got involved in the cannabis space really kind of on a fluke. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about us, and I'm going to kind of give you some other information that hopefully will be helpful to you, and kind of just let you know about some of the things that we've learned over the last 6 years and help you maybe avoid a few landmines and put you in the right direction. So as I mentioned, we got involved in this industry really as a fluke because one of our commercial clients came to us and said, hey, we just won 3 medicinal licenses, and we don't know what we're doing in this space, and we're pretty sure you guys have no idea what you're doing in this space, but you're our trusted design build partner, and we're going to figure it out together. So fast forward, after quite honestly having the privilege of learning alongside of our clients, when the industry now still is fairly juvenile, but it was really in its infancy 6 years ago. After all, in Illinois, we just had a program. It wasn't even a law yet. And so they weren't even sure that it was even going to last. And so the rules were being developed and systems were just coming online and new products were coming out to use. And so it was really interesting. And we really had the privilege of learning alongside of our clients. So as David said, we've now learned, as Jack Welch once said, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. So not only did we get to learn from our mistakes, but our clients' mistakes as well, and certainly learned how to do it more in the right direction over 40 projects in 12 states. So that's just a little bit about us. I'm not going to spend more time talking about us. You can certainly get some information, and you'll see at the last slide how to get in touch with us. I really am much more interested in helping you guys figure out how you guys can move forward. So let's talk about that. The first question really is that when do you get started? I know that everybody is on pins and needles with trying to figure out when licenses are going to be announced for not only for the craft grows, but certainly for dispensary licenses as well. And certainly there are things that you can do now. You certainly had to get a piece of property and get some design rolling in your application in order for you to be able to be on the docket to get a license. But there are some other things that you can do when you hit the ground, in order to hit the ground running. After all, right now, currently, the state has mandated that once the licenses are announced, you're only going to have 6 months in order to be able to get your building up and running. And that's a really short period of time, depending on the size of your building. And we're going to talk about some of the other challenges later on that have come up over the last couple of years between COVID and supply chain. You've got to get through design, get through permitting, and actually get your building up and running. Now, my advice is that if I had a crystal ball, which I don't, I would say that there's probably going to be some flexibility in that, but you can't count on it. So what can you do now? Well, the first thing you can do is really start developing your design. And what that means is there's a couple of different ways in which you can go down that road. There's the design, bid, build approach, or there's the design, build approach. The design, bid, build approach, real briefly, is what most people know and understand. They hire an architect and an engineer to come and design. They finish designs, get pricing from contractors, and then they go out and they do the construction. And there's a bunch of challenges with that, right? The contractor comes in and he's got no understanding or relationship with why the design is what it is, and therefore can't really offer much in the way of helping figure out efficiencies, offer simple things like you're doing a value add in a building, and all of a sudden you open up a wall and you've got something there that you don't expect. They can't really offer any help because they don't really understand how the design was generated. All of that gets eliminated in design build. And design build has got a bunch of different good things going for it. The first thing is that you're able to integrate your design and construction right from the very beginning, which means that the contractor who's executing this work understands the design process, and the designer understands the construction process. Now you might say, well, okay, that sounds great, but what exactly does that mean in reality? Well, what it does is that it allows everybody involved to be able to produce a design that is actually going to be able to be executed. And you can avoid a lot of the landmines that can cause problems in construction, because what works on paper doesn't necessarily work in the field. It provides you with a single point of accountability, which means typically in design build, more times than I can describe to you, is that the owner ends up being in the middle as the arbiter between the architect and engineer and the contractor. Should they have really looked at this in the design and avoided this problem? Is it really the contractor's fault? Could they have anticipated it? And you end up spending your time doing something other than what it is you need to be doing, which is concentrating on developing your business and operations. And so you also want to make sure that your design build partner has done this before. The last thing you want to do is have them try to figure it out while they're going through it. And as I mentioned, 6 years ago, it was a different playing field. Certainly it was a different playing field in Illinois. There were only a few operators that were out there and very few dispensaries that had been created. Today, there are more, and there are companies like us that have experience not only here in Illinois, but throughout the country, which is really important because the rules are changing on an ongoing basis. And what was best in class, which actually was Illinois, for quite a long time. And basically what ended up happening is that many other jurisdictions throughout the United States used Illinois as a poster child for what good looked like from a rules and regulation standpoint. So people that have done it before understand what's coming. They understand how things are changing. They're able to really work through the nuances of not only the regulation, but also they're on the cusp of what's coming out in the way of new products, new processes. I think you can go to the next slide, please. What I think is really important for everybody to understand is that you are an active participant as an owner. The true test of any good designer is to get inside their clients' heads and help them articulate that which they cannot do themselves. Because after all, it's your facility. And so we believe that good design means that you have to consider everybody that is involved in the process, from the owner of the business to the growers, to the people who are involved in processing, to the people who are involved in packaging, to the people who are involved in maintaining the building, because everybody has a stake. And just because we understand and have experience doing this for many different MSOs and independents out there, everyone has their own way of looking at it. I have long since said that working in this business is almost like working in the restaurant business, especially when you talk to processors and growers. Everybody has their own way of looking at a particular dish. And certainly, as most of you, or if not all of you know, that unlike the many industries that are involved in growing, cannabis is a different animal, that a temperature degree, positive or negative, a percentage of humidity, positive or negative, dramatically impacts the amount of product that you can produce, the quality of the product that you can produce. And what we do is we function as good listeners to say, hey, you tell us what environment that you're looking to produce, and we're able to produce it. So, what I would tell you is make sure you take an active role. Obviously, you want to lean on what good practice has been and what has been successful, and also what hasn't been successful with your team, so that you can talk through those things, and they can give you some good information as to why you would or wouldn't want to go in a particular direction. Other things to consider, which obviously not only affect what your environment is, but it affects timing and it affects costs. That is your environmental controls, what type of security and how you're going to monitor, and efficiencies, and how you can be able to maximize those efficiencies. And there are all sorts of tools in the toolbox out there between trusted partners on the design and construction side, as well as on the product consulting side. And where you can, you want to be able to design and build extra space for flexibility. After all, we know in the state that you're only allowed to initially to have a 5,000 square foot footprint, but we know it's growing up to 14,000 square feet. And that's just initially. And we don't know how that law will be amended. Certainly, we know that the law for medicinal was amended quite differently to recreational. And obviously, as the medicinal cannabis dispensaries, the original growers out there, what is coming up for craft grow is a little bit different than the requirements that they had. Next slide.
Andy, I have a quick question for you, if I can
Sure.
interrupt you.
Sure.
As an applicant, you mentioned a couple minutes ago that we should be involved with you, and I get that, but can you give a little more insight into like what that level of involvement is? I mean, am I talking to you every day, or how often what's on my plate?
Sure. So again, our job really is, if you know what it is that you want to build and how you want to build it, that's wonderful. But our job really is to, no pun intended, to extract that information from you. And so what we do is we start out by conducting what we call a program meeting. And that is really to define all of the different operations that are going to go into this particular building, whether it is solely grow, whether it is processing and grow, and what exactly are you going to process? Is it going to only be extraction? Are you going to actually make certain items that are then going to go out directly to be sold to retail? And so we are going to be asking questions from what products you make to what environment you want to grow in, and what environment you want to process in. And so the more information that you know, and the more information that you can give us, the more tailored the building is going to be for your particular use. And so after the program discussion, which can be, many days, depending on the detail of what's going to go into this building, there is careful monitoring along the way with you to be able to take what we're hearing verbally and to be able to produce a graphic solution. And so we then would be presenting these graphic solutions along the way and walking you through all of the different spaces and the sizes and the process from when raw materials come into the building until they actually leave. The next steps after that, once we have a design that we think we like, or several designs, which is again the beauty of design build, we will put numbers together for what the cost to actually build that out would be. And so by the time you end up through the preliminary design, you will have had a discussion where you have been able to verbalize what it is that you want to build, a graphic being able to show you what you can build and what the verbiage has turned into, and a preliminary budget to give you an idea on if you're on track with what your spend is going to be. So timelines are another interesting thing to talk about, and I alluded to it earlier when I spoke about our introduction. The introduction after David had so nicely set the table for me, and I will tell you that timelines used to be very predictable until COVID hit. And so, as you can imagine, not only was it a challenge for us from the perspective of how do you execute a project and still be safe. So not only do we have the OSHA standards from a construction standpoint to have had to deal with and still continue to deal with, but now COVID comes into play. Now, it looks like, God willing, we're coming out of COVID. However, the wake in which COVID has left us still is being felt today. And it's being felt really on the supply chain side. Of course, it doesn't help when you have a skipper trying to slalom through the Suez Canal and get stuck. But let's put that aside for a second. We do have serious supply chain issues. You've got manufacturing plants that weren't able to keep up because they had to cut back in production when it came down to COVID protocols. You had businesses that went out of business because of COVID. And so there are other businesses coming in to fill the void. So you really have to make sure that, and I can't stress it enough, get started as fast as you can in thinking about as much of what is going into this building, because the long lead items are going to absolutely affect you being first to market. And this is a business where being first to market makes all the difference in the world. What you're producing, how you're producing it, how it's getting distributed to retail operations, it really makes a big difference. So as I mentioned, the state guidelines say that it's going to take 6 months. Now, they're going to give you 6 months. I don't know if they're going to hold true to that. They may say yes, and there may be lawsuits trying to figure out how to extend that. So I wouldn't count on an extension. Do what you need to do now. Get your team created, involved now. Do all the groundwork you can now. Have those conversations now.
Andy, are you seeing material price increases as a result of the issues?
Material price increases are going through the roof. One thing in particular I can tell you is steel. Steel is hard to come by, and it's sitting at a premium, and it's been that way for quite a long time. If you were building a new building from scratch, it could take you anywhere from 25 to 30 weeks just to be able to get materials for things like how you build your roof, how you build your walls. And it's really a challenge. And so you really want to make sure that what it is that's being designed is taking that into consideration, because again, that can affect your first to market. Now, I'm not at all suggesting that you don't put steel in your buildings. I'm not at all suggesting that you don't build a new building from scratch. And I'm also not suggesting that you only do a value add by buying an existing building. But what I can tell you is that you've got to carefully look at your site selection. You've got to get teams that can really evaluate what your pros and cons are and how timing affects what it is that you're doing, including the suggestion of what you're going to put into this building. So again, that was a perfect segue. Albert, thank you for putting that slide up. Location and your building type certainly are cost drivers, but really what you're putting into it is also a huge cost driver. Specifically, not only the structure, but particularly HVAC and electrical work. So we are seeing units, just regular RTU units that would normally take 12 to 14 weeks into production to get to your site. We're seeing 20, 30 weeks in order to be able to get these units into production. Now, if you only have 6 months to build it and you're getting your units in 20 to 30 weeks, well, 30 weeks is already beyond your 6 months. And so as you're designing, you really need to take a look at what alternatives are out there without sacrificing the environment that you are trying to create. And there are definitely nuances out there to do it. There are building smaller rooms where you can put smaller prepackaged units in. There are chiller systems in which you can use. Again, some of these things you've got timing, you've got quality, and you've got cost. And you're going to get, as the saying goes, you'll be able to get 2 of the 3 of those. So if timing is an issue, it may cost you more money in order to be able to get there. If cost is an issue, it may take you a little bit longer, and you may have to decide to sacrifice some quality of product in order to get there. So definitely consider that as you are thinking about what's going into these buildings. So again, why wait? There's so much that you can be doing now. And I would tell you that you don't have to design your whole building from scratch and pick everything out tomorrow. But what you do need to do is really get your team on board now. You really need to start thinking about big picture, long lead items, because not only do you have what is from an infrastructure standpoint, but this is a perfect photograph of grow tables. Imagine as the units are coming up, the licenses are coming up, and these 40 are getting distributed. It's only the 40 in Illinois. Most of the companies that are producing this equipment are national, and they're having a tough time keeping up. Fertigation systems, lighting controls, HVAC controls, grow tables, grow lights, all of these materials are challenged right now because of COVID, because of the supply chain, and because this industry is exploding. It is truly like the 1840s when you had the gold rush in California, that everybody is looking to get the same stuff. And, how do you get there fast enough in order to be able to get first to market? And of course, there are also other nuances with that, right? If you're building your building in phases, or you need to build your building in phases, which certainly is an option, you got to make sure, again, that you're connected with people that can help you through what those supply chain issues are, and at least get you involved into a building where you can start growing product. So this is just a little bit of information on us, our contact info. Happy to have some discussion with anybody or everybody that wants to contact us and have some discussion. What I can tell you is we can't do everybody's project in the entire United States. And what's important for us, which is why we do this kind of work, is not so that we can get all the work from all the people in the room. It's really to help give some guidance to people that there are good companies that are out there that do this, that do what we do. And you really want to hire best in class when you can, and get the best that you can afford to employ, because they're going to really help you deal with the challenges that you have to in the design and construction side, and there are many. You want to be able to make sure that you've got the ability to spend the time that you need to on standard operating procedures and other operations, so that you can concentrate on, when the building is up and ready and running, that you can get in there day one and start producing product. So I thank you for my time. That ends my formal presentation. Certainly, David, you've got questions, and I'm sure that the group's got questions. I'm happy to answer any and all.
Yeah, I'll get to the group questions, but I want to just jump back to that. We don't have to look at the slide, but that slide about what we can do now. The picture that you paint with respect to the delays, obviously increasing costs, but to hit the ground running, is there anything that can be done before licensing that isn't purchasing materials or incurring costs, I guess? Or is that really the first step? And should we anticipate having to actually purchase materials ahead of licensing, which sounds horrific, but what do you think?
Well, so I would tell you a couple of things. Certainly you could take the risk of doing that, although, it's a risk. You're certainly not guaranteed getting a license, no matter how great you think your application was. So, to go out and procure materials, right off the bat, I'm not so sure that I would advise it. But what I can tell you that you can do, that you really need to do, is get your team up and running now. And I think that there's a lot of companies like us, for example, that we only take on the amount of work we can handle at any given time. And so what we've done with prospective clients is that we have signed letters of intent with them. And what that has allowed us to do is provide an avenue for them and a place in our schedule, so that when they do hear about their licenses, that we can hit the ground running and go through the process that we need to do, so that we can streamline a little bit. What I can tell you is that it certainly is worth the risk, in my opinion, if you really feel good about getting a license, to not only develop your team, but start developing your plan. Because you can save yourself probably a month, 6 weeks, if you've got some ideas about exactly where the equipment is going and what equipment that you're using. If you are waiting to start that process when you get your license, you're going to be at least a month to 6 weeks behind of the specification part of it. So that certainly is an easy lift, and it's not huge money to be able to get your design and engineering teams focused on that.
So call you as soon as possible.
Yeah, call me or call somebody that does what we do as soon as possible, because it's going to be a rush to market. There's no question about it. And again, I don't care if you're our size company or if you are 100 times larger than us. there's only so many materials out there. There's only so many companies that have done this before. So it doesn't much matter that you have, built distribution facilities for Amazon. If you've never built this before, you're going to be challenged. And so you got to get with people that know what they're doing.
Yeah, one related question here. How are you prepared to provide services to the rapid influx of new licensees?
So again, we take on the work that we can handle at any given time. So we've got a series of people that have letters of intent, and we're in it with the risk with them. We don't know that any of the people that we have right now are going to get a license, or they may all have licenses, get all licenses. I don't really know. What I do know is that we have come up with a way internally that out of all the licenses, out of all the letters of intent that we have that have come in order, as those people get licenses, that's how we're going to take them. So I would encourage anybody, if they're talking to companies like us that are doing the same thing, and I imagine that there are other companies that, I'd like to think we're so smart, but I'm sure there are other companies out there that are stacking their opportunities as well to get connected with people early on, because say that you're number 11 and the first 10 people don't get a license. If you're number 11, you're number 1 in who we would service. And down the line, those numbers go.
Yeah. As applicants, we all had to provide as part of our application, the floor plan and the design. Any challenges for you? And if you didn't actually do the applicant's plan, is that challenging for you? Are there issues that can come up?
Well, there are issues. There's a couple of issues. One, there's some copyright issues that you would really need to make certain that you had a use of ownership license released from the person that came up with that plan for you if you were going to go in a different direction. That's really important. And although you're the lawyer, not me, you could speak a little bit better to what that means. But I can tell you that I have seen many plans that have been developed that have some serious challenges to them. Some of them are going to get fleshed out based on how those plans are graded, and some of those are not going to get fleshed out, and we're going to have to deal with those in reality. And I'm not certain that, my guess is, without passing judgment, because I don't know the circumstances behind how those plans were generated, but my guess is that they're a result of not having a proper guide, listening to how operations are going to take place and being able to translate that graphically. Yeah. So again, what a great segue to promote the fact that if you have a plan and you really want to get into this business, get involved with people that know now to look at your plan and try to get things tweaked so that you could really hit the ground running when you do get your license and not start over from scratch.
All right, I have a question here from Leah Bailey. Hi, Leah. Is it a good idea to build the full shell for total potential canopy and build out sections, or better to build exactly what you need as you need it? It's a good question.
That's an excellent question, actually. And Leah, who I know, by the way, thank you for that question. What I would tell you is that I would design for the entire building and build out what you need. And the reason I'm suggesting that, although there certainly is economy of scale, and it will cost you more dollars over time if you were doing 2 or 3 phases than if you were to do it in 1 phase. And I want to talk about why I'm talking about costs in a second, because I think that's really important. I just want to table that for one quick second. But the technology is changing so much and so rapidly, and that if you build out the space to standards today and with what equipment is available today, my guess is that you're going to be behind the times when the next widget comes out. And it's going to, because again, over the last 6 years, just to give you a perfect example, over the last 6 years, when we first started designing these things, when we were doing extraction booths, we actually were making them. We were making them out of paint booths. because they had to be explosion proof and there was nothing on the market that actually existed. Now today, instead of a paint booth, which is the size, in most cases, the size of a railroad car, or at least a half a railroad car, today, there are extraction booths that are all in one that are the size of a conference table. And so I would tell you that I wouldn't build out for the entire space now. And I'm telling you that from this perspective. Most contractors charge a percentage of construction. So they have an absolute vested interest to make certain that your project costs more money. And we're not the only one that does this, but there are companies like ours that, as true partners with our clients, we want to be your design build partner, and our skin in the game is that we figure out how long a project takes, and that's how we charge as a stipulated sum. So you buy all of the work that we provide at our discounts, and if it's a 6-month job, we've got 6 months worth of fees, which means we have a vested interest in how long the job takes, because if it takes 6 months and a day, we're losing money. And so we want to make it happen in 6 months or less. And we have no vested interest in making it cost more money. So we're going to have really hard discussions as to why you would do one thing or something else, to see if there really is a value add to you. And we have many discussions where we actually talk our clients out of spending money now. Hence the reason why I'm bringing up, for you to do a total spend now for a build out that you can't occupy yet at this time because of what the restrictions are, and then to find out that the latest technology would cause you to do something that you now have to undo, I would talk you out of it.
Yeah, it's a good answer. And a good segue to Paul Magelli's question. I don't know who that is. Just kidding, Paul. Andy, if you had to estimate total cost increase percentage and the likely time in months that applicants are likely to bear due to the COVID and the licensing delays, what would you say? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but.
Yeah, so the cost increases are hard to judge if it's COVID related or it's supply demand related. Clearly there are products out there that if COVID wasn't an issue, factories can't keep up with orders because, back in the day when we first started designing and building these things, we used large scale HVAC units that mostly were either on other manufacturing plants or in schools. And these companies, big companies like Aon and Carrier, couldn't keep up with the supply and demand, and of course then COVID hit. So it's hard to really tell you what the cost increase would be different. What I can tell you is that it's easy to think that you're adding on a couple of months minimally of timing to your project if you were just to go with how things were built 2 years ago as to how things are being built now. So the true cream of the coffee is, how can you figure out ways to, you're not going to be able to influence Carrier or Aon to be able to get your units faster than, say, a multi-state operator. Okay. Or I just saw something up on a chat. Somebody just mentioned Desert Air, which we use Desert Air, quite a bit. They're also challenged with production timing. So I can tell you that there are other companies. In fact, Desert Air was a very good alternative, which we did use in a building that we did in another state other than Illinois, because they were able to improve. First of all, they had two things going for it. One, they were able to get atmospheric conditions that were more ideal than what our current companies were doing. And they were able to get us product a few weeks faster. And that really is the test of working with people that have done this before. It's, where can you find alternative methods of construction? Where can you find alternative materials and other products that you can use that are equal to or better than what everybody else is trying to grab at?
So many challenges. Wendy, hi, Wendy Esger. Wendy wants to know, this is a specific one. Do you think the HVAC systems that come with a remote human monitoring system is worth the added cost?
You forgot to say hi, Coach.
Hi, Coach.
Yeah, some stories there.
But you never smoked weed. I can attest. Never
that's
did
exactly
in college.
right. That's exactly. You just gave away my secret. So the
That's
so
why
the
you're so
iron-
good at this.
the irony of the people that don't know me is that I have never tried the product, and it's hilarious that people who do know me see what we've accomplished as a group in this industry. And it really wasn't for any other reason that when I was going to school way back when, there weren't such things as edibles, so you would only smoke it. And of course, now everybody has a bet. I'm not sure if if I have a better chance of winning the lottery or a better chance of trying the product, because everybody is betting on me what's going to come first. So all that to be said, getting back to your question, I would tell you that there's so much technology out there these days that you really have to look at what result you're trying to achieve and compare it to what your outlay is and what it is that you're controlling. So there are HVAC controls that only control HVAC. There are controls out there that monitor HVAC controls and also take care of your lighting and take care of fertigation. There's a bunch of different systems out there, and more are popping up every day. What I would tell you is you really need to do your due diligence. And I am of the opinion of you don't want to be the first one to be able to use this product. One of the benefits that we had coming in the infancy of 6 years ago was we had a chance to be able to see what worked and what didn't work in Colorado, in Washington, in California. And we were able to use those things that we said, let's stay away from, to help us maneuver and do different things here in Illinois when we did it.
So as part of your, I'm an applicant, I'm waiting to see if I'm going to get my license. I contact you because I want to hit the ground running. I want to lock you in. Do we start from day one and like even before the licenses are awarded? Are you talking to me about these different options and getting me to think about, the big picture and what it is I'm going to need?
Yeah, so I would say in an ideal situation, clients would come to us and say, okay, look, we want to get on your docket, but we don't want to wait. So what is it going to cost us to be able to sit down and have a program meeting with you where we could lay out exactly what it is we want to do, check in against the plan that we have submitted to see how congruent those operational needs are in relation to what we have on paper already. And let's start talking about what it looks like from a procurement schedule. And at that point, that isn't a huge investment. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you exactly what that would be because it's really on a case-by-case basis. But what I can tell you is that if you do that, you're going to be that much more ahead of the curve, and at least you know what it is that you're up against. So if you know that it's going to take 20 weeks to get the particular system that you're going to need to have, then you need to look at, well, maybe how do we phase this? How do we get this to a point where we can get ourselves up and running, maybe even on a temp basis? And what does that look like from a cost standpoint? What I would tell you is that people are so bogged down in costs for when they hear things like temp basis or not a full build out. And I would tell you that if you're first to market or one of the first people to market, you will make up any of those costs in a month, because what you're going to produce and what is being sold at, what product is being sold at today, is there is so much more demand than there is supply here. And get as fast to market as you possibly can.
Do you see a difference, or what differences do you see as a builder with the craft grow as opposed to the larger cultivation facilities that you've built? I mean, other than the obvious.
Well, the obvious really is, if you look at craft beer is almost like a craft grow. And so what Goose Island is in relation to Budweiser is speaks for itself. Now, I'm not at all suggesting that the larger growers don't produce a quality product. What I am suggesting is, again, going back to my commentary with regards to restaurants. If you were in a restaurant and you had, say, a couple hundred people that you had to provide meals for, what do you think the ability is to be able to produce a high quality product that was not only aesthetically pleasing, but it tasted great and it really met your expectation, as opposed to if you were the chef at, say, a large hotel and you had to provide food for a couple of thousand people, what does that look like? And so I think that your controls, your ability to produce a very high product, your ability to produce it consistently, I think that's where the craft growers are going to have their niche, and to be able to compete alongside the larger cultivators.
Are there major differences though from your perspective as the builder?
So not really, because it's really scalable. The fact is that our job is to be able to look at and create this environment, and the environment that I'm creating in for 5,000 square feet of grow is the same potentially as I would be looking at 30,000 square feet of grow or 100,000 square feet of grow, because I have to produce rooms that are going to produce the conditions that are going to be ideal to grow those plants. The nuanced differences really is about the operation. So the operation differences in a craft grow could actually be the same as they would be in a large cultivator. It's likely they're going to be different, and it's likely they're going to be different between large cultivator to large cultivator to large cultivator, because that's the way it has been.
Yeah.
It's been that way for us when we've looked at and discussed with other multi-state operators. The way they go to market and what they do is different across the different companies.
I got a question here from Drake. Hey, Drake. Drake is an applicant for a cannabis infuser and wants to know what is unique about a build out of commercial kitchen to produce edibles versus a build out for a non-cannabis commercial kitchen.
It's a really good question. Believe it or not, there's not tons that are different. It really is how product goes from extraction to the kitchen and how that atmosphere is controlled, right? You can't have oils that you spent all of this time making sure are as pure as they can be without particulate, open them up to a kitchen where you've got ingredients flying around that can go into those oils. So it's really as much about standard operating procedures than it is really about equipment, and it is about what goes into the physical part of the kitchen itself.
Can you talk about energy rebates from the state of Illinois for grow room facilities?
So that's a little bit beyond my pay grade. I can tell you that energy usage is going to be your biggest expense. There's no question about it. And what we have done is we certainly have looked at how to make the buildings, these environments, be as energy efficient as they possibly can to be able to control those environments. So in any particular building, you have an environment, and you have some of that environment in that particular space migrates out to other spaces. Well, not only don't you want to have that in a cannabis facility for a lot of reasons, you clearly don't want humidity in a grow room going out beyond the walls of what that grow room is, because it's going to create havoc in your dry room, in your trim room, your packaging room, your processing room, and so on. So there are techniques out there, whether it's stick built or we're using panel systems, in order to be able to create rooms that you are able to contain that environment. And then, of course, what's in those grow rooms and the energy that's being used in those grow rooms is different than what's going to be required in the other ancillary spaces. You don't need the same kind of HVAC equipment in a grow room as you do in a dry room, as you do in a trim room, as you do in a packaging room, as you do in other ancillary spaces. You obviously need to be able to control those environments, but it is different.
How do you, after you turn over the facility, when you're done and we're off and running, what's your involvement? You stay involved?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Certainly in facilities that are being built out in phases, we usually stay involved. and we do it really because we're in the maintenance business, because we're not. We do it because we're a relational company, and we've been so, as I mentioned, from the onset of this for 30 years. And what that means is that, we want to be the tool in the toolbox that our clients call and say, hey, we've got an issue, we've got a challenge, at least point us in the right direction. We're not doing it to earn extra dollars. And in many cases, we put our clients in contact directly with a supplier, directly with trades, in order to be able to get them speed to market to accomplish what it is that they actually need to have taken care of. But a lot of our clients, look to us and say, look, I know I could call the plumber. I don't want to call the plumber. I'm calling you. You need to go and look at this situation for us. You need to go and you need to say, hey, we want to add more hose bibs here. We want to add more lights in this room. We need to add more fans for circulation in the grow rooms and what have you. And so, we want your help. How do you integrate that, not only with our particular room, but how do you integrate it with our control systems? Because now you're talking about adding additional equipment that may change a process, may change, how something is controlled, whether it's, through GrowLink or Argus or any of the other systems that are out there. And so our clients rely on us for that. After the buildings are built, some of our clients continue to use us for that. Some of our clients, and we had a client of ours in Massachusetts that actually hired away our on-site superintendent to work for them because they knew the building so well, and they wanted to make certain that what it is that we provided, they were going to get the same level of product and service, and they did.
That's quite a service you provided for them. Another question here from Drake. What's your experience with vault construction? It's interesting. More difficult than anticipated? Any nuggets of wisdom or advice on that?
So back in the medicinal days, there wasn't really a whole lot to find when it came to vault construction. And we were building concrete block vaults with concrete caps and vault doors, which the funny part is that you could break through the vault door easier than you could break through the ceiling or the walls. Today, it's a lot different. Today, they have defined what's required for a vault door, both in a dispensary and in a cultivation. And they've actually changed the way vault walls are able to be built. You don't have to go with such heavy construction. You can use security mesh in between drywall and what have you. I would suggest to you, it's really just about your level of security and control. Clearly, we want to build vault walls that, we're able to control the atmosphere. If you're only going to build a stud wall with security mesh, you're going to be hard pressed to be able to control the environment inside that vault, which, depending on how often you're turning product, you might have product in there that you need to store for a little bit. I'm of the mindset that if this is what the commission is now accepting for a vault, that's what we should be using. There's no reason to build more than what they're asking for. After all, the rule is still that every square inch of every facility still has to be under constant monitoring. And of course, it all goes back to the state police, and it all has to be stored for months, and they've got to have access to it.
Paul's question here. Have you used DPS panels and other wall types? How would you compare or contrast?
So the challenge of wall types really is your flexibility. If you build conventionally, you can add things and move things pretty easily. And you can do it within the bounds of the walls themselves. If you're going to go with an insulated panel, then everything that you do is going to have to be on the surface, and your ability to be able to make repairs should you have a cart inside of a room that you bump into is going to be different than than if you build it conventionally. What companies will sell you on is the speed to market with construction. And I would tell you that it depends on what it is that you're building, how it is that you're building it, the size, the height, the length. You don't have as much flexibility with panels as you do with conventional stick framing. So I'd say it's case by case basis.
Yeah. Wendy, another question. Hey, coach. Is that good? What are the challenges and solutions you've seen in sealing the envelope building wise?
So sealing the envelope is, it's almost like, can you put on the heaviest down coat and walk out when it's 20 degrees below zero in Chicago with the wind chill? Or is it better to have layers? And I would suggest to you that it's better to have layers. And so when we have a room that needs to be controlled, it is really all about overlapping layers and how those get sealed. And that to me is how we've been most effective in being able to control the environment in those rooms.
Very interesting. I'm not seeing, we've got about 5 minutes left. So if you have any additional questions, send them in. I will comment that what I've taken away from tonight is that it is going to be a major challenge to comply with a 6-month period. And I'm going to need you as an expert witness when I go before the Department of Agriculture on a petition for, or you're going to have to be dealing with them quite a bit in the next year, I would imagine, just because you know a lot more about this than they do. And
well, the good news is they know us. We actually, I'm proud to say, although I give full credit to my team, I take no credit for this. We were the first Illinois dispensary that opened up the day that they got inspected without a single punch list. So they know us. They understand that we know best practice. And so if I can be of influence there, I'm happy to be so.
yeah, no, that's terrific. That's really important too. I think obviously the relationships in this highly regulated industry and challenges that we have, it's important to have those relationships. Wendy, some more specifics here, talking about windows, how to best blackout and seal.
So I'm assuming that Wendy's talking about if you've got an existing building and how do you deal with windows when you're talking about how they affect different rooms. I mean, what I would tell you is when it comes to doing a successful build in in an existing space, is that we're actually building a building within a building. And so, the easiest way with windows is to actually remove them and to finish the inside and the outside just as if they were not there. That can be quite costly if you're talking about lots of windows. So what we've done, without getting too technical, and I'm happy to have that conversation offline with anybody that wants to, is that we're able to cover up windows with stud walls, insulation, vapor barrier, and then we usually build a whole nother wall in front of it that's also insulated. So it's as if the window was really not there. You would see it from the outside, but you couldn't see it at all from the inside.
That's really,
and you couldn't see it looking in. You would
Right.
just look into something that was completely blackened out.
Yeah, that's great. Ton of information, Andy. Thank you so much. Any parting words? I know Albert's going to share your contact information.
Yeah, look, it's an exciting time. Like I said, if you were to have asked me this 6 years ago, if this is what I'd be doing as a majority part of our business, I would tell you, whatever product you're smoking, that's the reason you're asking me that question. I would tell you that it is exciting. I really believe that Illinois is finally going to get on the on the stick. And actually this year, I think they're really going to distribute those licenses. And I think we're going to actually get started. And I think the opportunity to be best in class and speed to market is really out there. And I think that all of you people out there as applicants being on the cusp of knowing that there is so much demand out there and so little supply, that even if you're not the very first to market, there's so much demand that you'll be very successful. And so certainly this round of licensing is going to be huge. And my guess is the next round will also be huge, not as opportunistic as this one is, because you'll be first to market, but even the next round and maybe even the round after that, it's a pretty big state. And there certainly is lots of opportunity here. I mean, think about how many Binny's liquors there are in every locale, and they're all busy. Think about how many restaurants there are in every locale, and they're all busy. Restaurants that you know and love and have wherewithal. So I would just say, don't wait. Get your team created as fast as you can, and get as much down as you possibly can. You've got wherewithal for.
Terrific. Thanks. I don't know if Brian's gonna take us out or we say goodbye.
David, I'd be happy to take us out. There's a question about the video being available offline, and we did record this. So once it's ready for prime time, Dominique will send out a link letting everybody know that it's available. And Cece will also be sending anybody who signed up for tonight's discussion a survey link. So please respond to the link. It's important that we get your feedback because we're doing this for you. So we take all the feedback seriously, we take it to heart, and we want to make changes for the better for the group. So with that, we will say thank you to David for hosting, to Andy and to your team for being available tonight, and to the rest of you for participating. Thanks so much and have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Great seeing you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you.